Hey everyone, get ready to dive into creativity today because we're really going to get into it. We're looking at this new edition of Explaining Creativity, by R. Keith Sawyer and Dana Henriksen.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And get this, it's going to be a myth-busting deep dive. Like, remember those aha moments everyone thinks are like the heart of creativity?
Right.
This book's like, hold on, not so fast. Turns out even those tests, the ones that are supposed to measure those moments, like they can be totally thrown off by the smallest things.
Really?
Yeah, it's wild. Like just changing a logo on a test can totally skew the results.
Yeah.
Who knew a logo could be so powerful, right?
Wow, that's crazy. It really makes you wonder, how we've been looking at creativity all wrong,
Totally. And it's not just about measuring some kind of creativity score.
Yeah.
Right? It's way more about understanding the process itself.
And the process is, let me tell you, way more interesting than you might think. This book, it lays out these 8 stages.
8 stages?
Yeah, 8 stages, but it's not like a straight line, A to B to a masterpiece.
Oh, okay. So not like a straight line. Gotcha.
No, more like, a jungle gym or something. You're bouncing back and forth between stages, like problem finding and then over to knowledge acquisition.
Oh, I like that. The jungle gym analogy.
Right. Makes you think about it differently. And then there's incubation, and that one's really where things get interesting. You ever have those moments where you're just stuck on a problem?
Oh, all the time.
And then boom, the answer just hits you when you're doing the dishes or something.
Totally. Like when you least expect it.
Exactly. So this book is saying that's your brain, working behind the scenes. It's making these cool connections while you're busy doing other things.
Huh. So it's like our subconscious is off being creative while we're just living life.
Exactly. And speaking of creativity, this book really got me thinking about how we even define it. They talk about the individualist view, which is all about, what's new and exciting to you.
Okay, so something that's new for me, but not necessarily for everyone. I get that.
Right. But then there's also this whole other thing, the sociocultural view, which throws in this whole other question of, is it valuable to the world? It's not just new to you, it's got to be new to the world. And it's got to have value.
Interesting. So it's I don't know, you might invent a super efficient way to fold your laundry.
Which, life-changing for you, maybe, but...
Right. But not exactly going to change the world.
Exactly. But then you think about a huge scientific discovery or a work of art that changes how people see the world, that's aiming for a much bigger impact.
Right. So there are totally different levels of creativity at play,
Yeah.
depending on the context and the goal and everything.
Absolutely. And that's what makes it so fascinating. Yeah. And it's not just about how big the invention is or anything. It's also about, what we think of as creative. You know what I mean? What even counts? This book, it goes way beyond just the high art stuff,
Yeah.
They talk about technology and modern music, even digital art, which is cool.
Right. Makes sense, though. I mean, you got to be creative to code a website or, make music or design a VR world or something.
Exactly. It takes creativity.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is the book shows how all those creative processes, even if they seem different, they actually share a lot of the same elements.
Oh, really? So they're more similar than you'd think.
Way more similar.
Right.
Like a painter, a musician, a business person, entrepreneur. They all kind of tap into the same creative flow in a way. It's pretty neat.
I like that. Okay, well, speaking of flow, this book really blew my mind when it talked about creativity and well-being, how they're connected. We all have those moments where we're in the zone, right?
Yeah.
Super focused on something we love doing.
Oh yeah, that flow state is powerful stuff. And this book suggests that doing creative things, any creative things really, not just art, can be really good for you, therapeutic even.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying even if my painting looks like a 5-year-old made it, just the act of painting is good for me.
That's the idea. It's not always about the end result, but more about the process of creating something new. And this is cool. That journey, that process, it's different for everyone, depending on who you are, where you're from, all that. The book talks about that too.
You mean how our backgrounds and cultures, influence our creativity?
Totally. There's this fascinating part where they talk about how different cultures see creativity differently. What one culture thinks is amazing and innovative, another might think is, just weird. And they look at how those ideas have changed over time, which is really interesting. It's not like there's just one definition of creativity for everyone,
Which makes you think, What if there's all this creative energy out there that we don't even recognize because it's coming from a different perspective, right?
Exactly. And that's where technology comes in, which the book gets into as well. Like AI, digital platforms, all that. It's changing everything about how we think about creativity.
Yeah, true. Like how easy it is now to put your work out there. Think about YouTube, Etsy, all those.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through a publisher or a gallery or anything anymore. You just create and share.
Right. It's a whole new world for creators.
Yeah.
But it's not just about access and getting your work out there. Technology is making us rethink what it means to be an artist, what it means to own an idea, even what we call art in the first place. Like what happens when AI starts creating paintings or writing music? Who's the artist then?
Whoa. Yeah, that's getting really deep really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we on the edge of some kind of creativity revolution or something where the rules are totally changing?
It's exciting. A little scary too, right? And the book doesn't shy away from those big questions. It makes you think hard about what creativity even means in this digital world.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's come back to something a bit more, well, I don't know, basic maybe. Like, how can we, unlock our own creativity? This book talks a lot about believing in yourself, right? Which I love.
Oh, absolutely. But it's more than just, thinking happy thoughts. They talk about how believing in your own creative potential actually changes the way your brain works when you're trying to solve problems.
Oh, wow. So it's not just like a feel-good thing. It actually helps you be more creative.
It does. If you believe in yourself, you're more motivated to try new things, more likely to work through problems, more open to trying different approaches. It's like a creativity superpower or something.
I like that. So basically, believing in yourself is like step one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. It's like once you've got that belief, then what? What's next on the creativity checklist?
Well, it's funny because a lot of times we think about creativity as this solo thing, right? Like you're locked in your studio, lost in your own world.
Yeah, for sure.
But this book actually spends a lot of time talking about collaboration, how we're creative together. And get this, they totally debunk some common myths about brainstorming. Like, remember all those times we were told the best way to come up with ideas is to just throw a bunch of people in a room and see what happens?
Oh, yeah. Classic brainstorming.
Right. Turns out that's not always the best approach. In fact, it can totally backfire. There's even a term for it, production blocking. Basically, sometimes the whole group dynamic can actually stifle individual creativity.
Oh, wow. So it's like you're about to say something brilliant and then
someone jumps in with their idea and your thought just vanishes. Poof, gone.
the worst. Okay, so how do you get around that? Like, what makes group creativity actually work?
Well, the book talks a lot about creating a space where everyone feels safe to share their ideas, Like no judgment, no matter how out there the idea might seem. And diversity is key too. The more different perspectives you have in the mix, the more chances you have for those unexpected connections that spark something truly innovative.
I like that. So it's like instead of everyone trying to force out ideas in the same direction, it's more about creating a space where all these different creative energies can kind of bounce off each other.
Exactly. And we can't forget about how technology plays into all of this too, right? Like, think about all the ways we can collaborate creatively now that we couldn't in the past. Shared documents, virtual whiteboards, all that.
Oh yeah, for sure. We can be in the room together even if we're miles apart.
Exactly. Technology is changing the game. But I think the big takeaway here, and the book really drives this home, is that creativity isn't just this thing that happens in isolation. It's connected to everything. Our own minds, yeah, but also the people around us, the culture we're part of, the tools we use. It's all connected.
It's like this whole ecosystem of creativity. I like that.
Yes, and that actually leads to what I think is the most mind-blowing part of this whole book, the idea that there might be forms of creativity we can't even imagine yet.
Whoa, okay. Now you have to explain that one. What do you mean?
Well, think about it. Everything we know about creativity right now, it's all filtered through our current understanding of the world, right? Our culture, our technology, all that shapes how we view things. But what happens when those things change drastically? Like, imagine if you tried to explain the internet to someone living 100 years ago.
I mean, they'd probably think you were crazy.
Exactly. So what if there are ways of thinking, ways of creating, ways of expressing ourselves that are so outside our current realm of understanding that we can't even fathom them yet? That's what this book is suggesting, that as we continue to evolve, technologically and otherwise, we might just stumble upon entirely new forms of creativity, which is kind of freaky, but also really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's like we're standing on the edge of this unknown creative territory. We have no idea what's out there.
Isn't that amazing, though? It's like creativity is this endless frontier. We might learn a few things, but we can never fully conquer it or understand it completely, which makes it all the more fascinating to explore.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've definitely given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
We have.
So if you're feeling inspired to tap into your own creative potential, to explore those uncharted territories, I highly recommend checking out Explaining Creativity. It's packed with even more insights, research, and thought-provoking questions that I know will get those creative sparks flying.
And remember, creativity isn't just for artists or musicians or inventors, it's in all of us. So whether you're starting a business, solving problems at work, or just trying to live a more fulfilling life, don't be afraid to get creative. You never know what you might discover about yourself and the world around you.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of creativity. Thanks for joining us.
It's your body.